huge New Beginnings welcome to everyone joining, and a big welcome to our guest Zainab Ismail, who's joining us all the way from New York. So we're super blessed and super lucky to get your time. And it's a conversation that I've really been looking forward to. And I've been following on you on Facebook and Instagram and your work for many years, and I'm glad that we've had this opportunity now to connect formally and to discuss some of your experience. So we posted the link to Zainab's conversion story on social media. But before I do that, I'm going to let you talk about. And we've had our first New York comment at Empire State of Mind from Jeanette. Jeanette's one of our regulars at New Beginnings.
Alhamdulillah. Much love to my brothers and sisters across the pond.
MashaAllah. Fantastic. So for those who are not aware, Zainab Ismail is a fitness and nutritionist expert, and you've had an amazing story and an amazing career training some of the biggest names in Hollywood. And I'm not going to spoil too much because that's going to be part of the next question that I ask you, but you've got significant presence on social media, and you mix your knowledge of health and fitness and nutrition with your life as a Muslim, and you can see from the response that you get on social media just what a role that plays in people's lives, and the importance that we place on that. So I'm going to begin with my first question, and it's a question that I usually steer away from in terms of conversion stories, but I know that there's some real benefit in hearing it. So tell us, how did a girl from the Bronx become Muslim?
Alhamdulillah, Bismillah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا. Alhamdulillah, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to be here with you, Brother Imran, and New Beginnings. So let's start with this New Beginning story. So I was living my best life, or what I thought was my best life, as a celebrity personal trainer and nutritionist. My life revolved around traveling from Miami to Hollywood to Las Vegas, which is like, I guess, the European equivalent of Ibiza, and the Hamptons. So that was my routine. I worked with very high profile people in business, in finance, professional athletes, celebrities. And I thought that was everything, flying in private planes, being at the private parties, hobnobbing with all the celebs in Hollywood. But as time went on, even though I was born and raised Catholic, there really was never any guidance to lifestyle issues or how to handle yourself, or how do you rectify, or how do you purify your heart, or, what is it really that God is asking of us? And ultimately, it was really my fitra was calling out, like our innate, what we're born with, was calling out that it needed a greater connection with God. I didn't know what kind of connection I was looking for. I did know that I did want to really not be Christian anymore at some point, because I just wasn't feeling a connection there. And I knew that I didn't want to be Jewish, because for the most part, I had a lot of Jewish clients, but I saw that it wasn't very inviting. Like, the process to become Jewish seemed very intense, to say the least. So on one of my trips, I was coming back from a business trip from Michigan, actually, which is in the middle of America, doing some studies. And I was attending a client's wedding. And it was in a Catholic church. And I just left the ceremony at that moment, knowing I no longer had a connection to Catholicism or Christianity. And I was like, okay, well, what do I do? So I always had so many Muslim friends. So I said, let me just Google, how do you become Muslim? Because I know, like I said, to become Jewish seemed really hard. Mm-hmm. And I Googled, how to become Muslim. And I'm like, that's all you have to do? It's just say that one line? That's it? I was like, oh, okay. So I called some friends that were Muslim and they were like, oh my God, yay. Ah. They got very excited. Okay. And they decided to load me up with books. I never read a page of the Quran or anything before becoming Muslim. That just wasn't the route for me. For me, it was all from the heart. And it
Hmm.
was what I saw from other Muslims uh, in terms of how they conducted themselves with their families, their manners and behaviors, just the selflessness, the love, the caring. Uh, I didn't know anything about Islam, but I knew how Muslims were. And
Hmm.
that's what mattered more to me. And then I continued on, but I knew in my mind I wanted to become Muslim. I didn't know how and I didn't know when, but that it would be before that coming Ramadan. So I took my Shahada in June of 2009. So this June will make 13 years that I've been Muslim. Thanks be to God. And I was coming back from a Hollywood trip and something just entered my heart. You're ready to take your Shahada. And of course, I call my friends again and they were like, wow, okay, this is great. We're going to go to the masjid and we're going to meet on Friday and you're going to do it on Juma. And I was like, okay. But then my friend also said to me, but you don't have to do it in front of people. You can say it by yourself. You know, you have Allah and the angels as your witness,
Hmm.
as your witnesses. And lo and behold, I don't know, Muslim Standard Time, we didn't get our times right. And that same day of that Jummah in 2009, June 12th, 2009, I took my Shahada by myself in front of my computer with Allah and the angels as my witnesses. And the rest is history.
It's an amazing story, particularly from the background that that you come from, and and it's a world that most people are never going to have any insight into from the inside. I mean, we see it in the media, we see documentaries, we see series and that kind of thing. But what is it like from the inside? Because you now have secrets from the inside that to a world we'll never see. And what is it?
I mean, please excuse me if I refer to it this way, but I call it living hell on earth. It's the world of Satan. There's absolutely nothing admirable, there's nothing praiseworthy. It's living the complete opposite lifestyle of a Muslim. You're self centered, you're arrogant, you're conceited, you're selfish, you're not giving, you're not compassionate, you have no mercy. It is all about you. And you're just so self consumed that you're just living such a dark life. Ultimately, it's just consumed with the self.
Hmm. And did you feel this when you were in the midst of it? Was this a feeling that was growing within you, or?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, because you're exposed to every single thing that a Muslim would never want to see, do, or even think about.
Hmm.
So, and for the reason that we're told, guard our limbs, because these things really put a stain on our hearts, and they damage us the more we listen to things or see things or, do things that really we don't realize like that spiritual effect that it has on us.
Hmm.
And at some point, you just know that there's nothing godly about any of the things. And it's not something to aspire to.
Hmm.
So for me, we call it the dunya, the worldly things. So for me, anything that reminds me of the dunya, I run the other way, because to me that's shaitan's world.
Hmm. And what was the catalyst? Because I mean, your mashallah, the video that you have on your conversion has like 2 million views, and it's something clearly that's resonated
Alhamdulillah.
with a lot of people. And you made reference to, you said you were in a car accident.
Oh,
Um,
so in 2005, I was in the best shape of my life, getting ready for a triathlon, which is a you run, bike, swim competition. And I was driving to my office in New York, and I was driving along, and there was debris on the road, and I had a new SUV, a small SUV, and I flipped it. It flipped. I hit
mhm,
something on the road, and I flipped across the highway. And when I was, and I, alhamdulillah, thanks be to God, I left without a scratch, maybe just a little, a small concussion. But what I was told at the hospital, uh, and I was in ICU for a few hours because they thought they saw blood on my brain because of the concussion. They said people come with a quarter of that type of accident and don't make it. And then the following, over the weekend, the administrator of the hospital visited my bedside, which apparently he never did that or does that regularly, and said to me, I don't, off the record, I don't know what you believe in, but whatever you believe in, find out what God wants of you and you go and you do it. And that was 4 years before my conversion. So I continued with the life I was leading well into the next few years. So that was just something that stood in the back of my mind. And like anything else, it's like, when we make a supplication or a dua, it doesn't mean that it'll be answered today or tomorrow. But somewhere along the line, when we make some intention, consciously or unconsciously, God opens that door in a way and from where we least expect it.
Absolutely, and it sounds, and I think, sorry, one thing, important thing that I mentioned in terms of it from your introduction is the work that you're involved in now, because you mentioned about that door being open, and subsequently there's been a number of doors that have opened for you in terms of your own study and the journeys that you've been on. So are you able to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, certainly. So, alhamdulillah, thanks be to God, I was blessed to be put in a school with traditional teachers all having chains of narration or sanad and isnad, which means that that's teacher learn from a teacher, learn from a teacher, learn from a teacher, learn from a teacher, back to the prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. So I was rooted in a very structured, beautiful tradition from pretty much day one of my learning process. And coming from an academic background in my field, traditional Islam was a no brainer because it made sense on how the religion was transmitted from teacher to teacher. And that foundation was is priceless because it was my initial teachers that taught me some of the most key components of what till to this day that I implement myself, and as I teach anyone else, that the importance of making your sincere intentions, that every action is by your intentions. The importance of knowledge, of seeking sacred knowledge, being in good company. The people around you influence you most. And if you're around people that are, God conscious and love the prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, that will also be a better influence on you. And the importance of sanad and isnad, the chain of narration, having these qualified teachers. And when you hear the name of the prophet, you say it loud and proud, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So people always make fun, I'm part of an organization, Al Maqasid, and anytime we're doing these live streams or retreats, I'm always on the lady side, sitting right by the camera, and my male counterpart is on the other side doing the camera work. And every time our teacher would say the prophet, they always hear my voice in the camera, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, and then really from that school in New York City, that was my foundation, Mecca Center, I then met the first teacher that really was my greatest supporter. And to this day, a great supporter was Imam Zaid Shakir, who was also the spiritual guide for Muhammad Ali and countless others. And then from there, I met Sheikh Hamza Yusuf and many other of our teachers. So it's really been a blessing in this short time that I've been Muslim. I just then, out of my ability, started to travel around the country, to Canada, to different places to study at different retreats and intensives. And then once I started traveling to the sacred cities of Mecca and Medina, that was it. That was it. Not everything changed in 2014 when I made my first trip with what's called Sacred Caravan with Sheikh Hamza Yusuf to Mecca and Medina. And when I got to the mosque of the prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and I put my forehead in sujood down on the ground in the Rauda, where in front of his place where his grave is held, that was when I tasted the religion. That was for me the catalyst, and that really catapulted the doors for me to really delve deeper into the sciences that encompass prophetic nutrition, what the Prophet ﷺ ate, what he drank, how he broke his fast, when he broke his fast, and that being from the Shamayil, or the characteristics. So, I mean, not to
Hmm.
get, technical with all the jargon and all the, different books and lessons and things, but it's really been an ongoing continuation, because knowledge is just doesn't have an end. And as we learn, we should seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave, and it really makes the biggest difference, because Islam is not something you could do it yourself at home.
Hmm. I mean, and it's amazing. And for those who aren't aware, Zainab's mentioned the names of some of the greatest uh, English-speaking scholars that we have in the world, and clearly the having reference and having those people around you has clearly served you well. I'm interested in the early part of your journey. You mentioned about Mecca Center in are they in Brooklyn,
New
or
York
are they
City
in?
and Manhattan,
Ah,
in
okay.
the center,
Oh,
in the thick of it all.
oh wow, that's incredible. Okay, so what did they get right? Because we see many converts who are involved in circles of knowledge, and then 5, 10 years on, they struggle, or that expression of Islam is not necessarily conducive to their spiritual growth. So what did they get right?
There's just such barakah that in that school, the teachers, I mean, our foundation of, I mean, most of my teachers at the time, or are generally Shafi, which is one of the four madhabs, and having teachers that are just lovers of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and are rooted in holding that banner and that message of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, so high, no matter what it costs them. uh, and seeing that example, seeing those prophetic examples in front of us, it's like, you're like, okay, I know I'm falling short, but I'm going to keep striving because of the sincerity. There was a sincerity amongst the teachers, the volunteers, and quickly, I mean, I never volunteered for anything in my life. I was suddenly a volunteer, like right away. And
Hmm.
that was really where my women's exercise class, Fit for Allah, or the name Fit for Allah, was born,
Uh-huh.
because it was during one of the, I would go this, I probably had just put the hijab on. So I started in Mecca Center October 31st, and I put the hijab on January 3rd. So just like within 2 months, because from going there, I was like, okay, I need to step this up if I
Hmm.
really want to take this seriously. And it was one of the women's halakas that were done monthly, the sister circle, and the coordinator, the ustada, or teacher, she asked me, oh, so what do you do? And I told her, oh, I do this and that. And she was like, what? You have to come and teach us. I was like, okay. And the first lesson that I learned was everything is by intentions. So I said, okay, if I'm going to teach, the name of the class, all of the classes always had a name, whether, but it was really, based on a book or the Islamic science. But I said, but this still has to have an intention that's worthy of what we're doing here.
Hmm.
And then I was like, what is it going to be? Oh, fit for Allah. We're getting fit for the sake of Allah. That's our intention. And then from there, I started teaching very early on, and it just continued from there. But really, I think the the teachers, the company, and getting involved in serving is essential. Service is like, if you want to take your connection to God to another level, serve other human beings, Muslim or not. Serve in whatever capacity you can, whether it be in your time, in your wealth, in your skill set, in whatever it is, because that's really what connects the hearts. We can read all the books and hear all the lessons. Like, I always remember, like, one lesson until, like, uh, another big lesson was, like, the teachers would always talk about. And, we had scholars coming from all over the world to visit us. We
Hmm.
had scholars from Yemen, we had scholars from Syria, we had scholars from Lebanon, we had scholars from Canada. I mean, they all came to Mecca Center because there was nowhere else for traditional learning, and there still isn't for in New York City. That's the only place.
Wow.
And I remember they would always talk about tahajjud, this night prayer, night prayer. I'm like, we're praying 5 times a day. How much of a difference can it make? And lo and behold, once I took it upon to make the intentions to take on tahajjud, which was when I went to Umrah in 2015, again
Hmm.
with Sheikh Hamza. I said, I am going to take tahajjud, which is the night prayer. And all I can say is, boy, it was everything that they said and then some. So sometimes we hear the teachers and, they say these things that sound so lofty and unattainable, but it's all about the journey little by little that we're striving. Doesn't matter where we came from, doesn't matter, what your background is. It doesn't matter, because ultimately it's between you and Allah and God. So Mecca Center is just blessed with the people who have come through those doors with such sincerity and dedication, and they dedicated their lives to relaying traditional knowledge from traditional teachers. And that's something that we don't have too many of those institutions in the United States, unlike the UK, which has a lot more.
Hmm.
So we have different dynamics in the US. It's very different than the UK. And I've been to the UK. I was there in 2015, and I went all over the country, and I
Oh.
went to many of the institutions.
Oh, wow.
And it's a very, very different dynamic in the UK to the United States.
Okay, interesting. So, and what were your observations in the UK? What did you notice? What differences? Um,
There's a lot more Muslims.
mm,
That's number one. Uh, there's more of a diaspora, post-colonialism, like the people who have come to the country fleeing different reason, different uh, tribulations in their countries and such, and the openings for people to work. So there's like more of us. There's more towns and cities that are
mhm,
Muslim. Here in America, we're scattered all over the place,
yeah.
and there's really only about maybe 5 to 6 million Muslims in America, including children, and depending who identifies as a Muslim. And there's a because there's more Muslims in the UK, the community it's an older community, not
Mhm,
meaning an age, but it's been rooted in the UK much longer. The community in America is very young. I mean, with the exception of, the slaves that were brought over from Africa against their will back in the 1700s and
mhm.
such. But in terms of like the overall community, it's very young. I mean, you maybe a lot of Muslims really came in the 60s and 70s. So in the UK, the establishment of organizations is much more progressed. There's many more institutions. There's much more emphasis on traditional Islam.
Mhm.
So you don't really have that in the United States as a whole.
Okay, it's interesting. I mean, because when I looked at other societies and other Muslim diasporas, like for example in South Africa, there are a few generations ahead of us, and it kind of
Oh,
gives you an idea. Okay, where might things be in a couple of generations, uh,
right.
and and hopefully some kind of pitfalls to look out for. And I think one of the themes that's come across is this idea of traditional Islam. Um, which is interesting, because it's not a distinction that would be immediately discernible to someone who's new to the faith, or hasn't yet entered the faith. This idea of traditional Islam, which suggests that there's various manifestations of Islam that perhaps resemble it, but
Yes.
lose something essential.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting for me because what I experienced in London was different than what I experienced in Nottingham. What was different than when I got to Leicester I went, oh, okay, it's a little different here. And then
Yeah.
I went to Birmingham. I was like, oh, okay, it's a little different here too. And then I went to Liverpool and I was like, oh, okay. So it was, very shocking every city I went to, how radically different, or the polemics and the dynamics, which
Mm,
I quickly was educated on. I was like, we don't have any of this in the United States. This would make it a bit challenging for some people, I think, but
mhm.
has so many positive aspects as well. Though there's always going to be things that, make it challenging, but for the most part, it seemed so much more together as a community.
Okay, interesting, interesting. Uh, did you come to Manchester?
No, I only went I got as far as Liverpool. I didn't get to Manchester or
Okay.
Bradford.
Okay, okay. So Manchester's kind of en route between Liverpool and Bradford.
Mhm.
Quick question: Manchester, red or blue? Don't worry. Sorry, that's a football joke for the that's which
Oh, wait a minute.
soccer,
Wait a minute.
which
Us
you guys
American
call
folk?
bananas.
Okay,
Yeah.
wait. We're not into soccer. Sorry. We're not into football. We're not into soccer. If you talk to me about the NBA, the NFL, or the Major League Baseball, then we could talk. But unfortunately, we're not really into soccer here.
Oh, okay, okay. No, that's fine. But it's blue. If anyone asks, Manchester is blue. Um,
Okay.
okay,
I
cool.
know
So
the team, Manchester United.
no, that's the wrong one. That's the wrong one.
Oh,
They're the
That's the
red
red
ones.
one.
Yeah,
oh,
yeah. So
I
it's
wouldn't even
blue.
know. I wouldn't even know anything about soccer.
Okay, all you need to know about Manchester United is that they have a devil on their
Mm,
badge. I rest my
mm.
case. Okay,
Oh,
yeah. Okay, okay. So interesting that I didn't know you've been to the UK. So you,
Us Americans, we don't. It's like foreign to us. Sorry.
so I mean, in addition to your travel to for your clients and whatnot, that you've had the privilege of traveling for the Islamic activity and the teaching that you do. And tell us more about that. Tell us where you've been
Oh,
and
alhamdulillah. I mean, I did mention that the life changer was being in the presence of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. So that was like the spiritual catalyst. But then the catalyst for my heart to just crack open was traveling for the sake of Allah, for God, to serve other Muslim communities in Muslim minority countries, in first in Mexico, Cuba, the Dominican Republic, Panama, and Brazil, and also Jamaica.
wow.
I just, when you sacrifice or you put yourself in a situation that you trust Allah 100%, and you just basically like jump off the cliff, like tawakkal Allah, like trust, you have such an internal change that happens. That's just, it's not, I can't even, I almost can't even describe it. Serving some of these communities that they hold to the rope of Allah, to God, like this so tightly, and they have nothing.
Mhm.
These are all third world countries. The poverty is something I've never seen. And they don't have access to teachers, they don't have access to books, they don't have access to clothing, meaning Islamic. Now they're starting to be a bit more resources available, over because I started doing these Dawa trips in 2015. So I've been traveling now. Actually, at this time last year, I was in Cuba, and then we went to Panama, and then we went to the Dominican Republic, where we ended our trip short because the airports of the world were shutting down. And we're
Mhm.
like, oh, I think we need to get back to New York because of the pandemic. So it's been really a beautiful journey. I mean, I'm saddened. Again, this year, I probably won't be able to travel for Ramadan because of the restrictions. Us Americans, we're not exactly welcomed in all of these countries unless you produce proof that you're either vaccinated or you have to be in quarantine for several days.
Hmm.
So it might be a little challenging to travel this time around, but usually I've been traveling during Ramadan uh, for like anywhere from 7 to 10 days to spend time, teach classes for the sisters and the brothers as well, because I teach for both men and women.
Hmm.
I'm perfectly fine with that, and that has worked out very well. Um, Having iftars with them, bringing them aid, uh, you know, basically doing the fundraising, doing the actual trip, what we're going to do, where we're going to go, basically A to Z, just kind of just giving of myself 100% and letting the rest be whatever Allah provides. And the people are always beautiful, they're always appreciative. And I think, even though our teachers have really emphasized we have to keep teaching, 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 but I really go with my heart. I go, especially for the sisters because they don't really have access to teachers or anything like that. And so people have real problems, real questions,
Hmm.
struggles. Like even just yesterday, I spoke to a sister that, alhamdulillah, a lot of people have taken Shahada on Instagram. And she had taken Shahada with us 2 Ramadans ago, and her mother doesn't really want to speak to her. And she was crying on the phone. This was just yesterday. And then today, another sister, mashallah, 60 years old, lives in a very, now this is where, when you said red and blue, my red and blue is different than your red and blue. When we think blue, we think differently. When we think red, we think differently. So for us, that's a political thing.
Of
So
course, yeah.
in that reference, this 60-year-old woman took Shahada, it was about a month ago, uh, 60 years old, from the Midwest, of the most red area of the country. And unfortunately, she also being, her daughters are really like not speaking to her and really upset that she became Muslim. And I had to speak to her today, actually, just a few hours ago. So, it's people need that interaction. When they become Muslim, they don't need to learn everything yet. They
Mhm.
need to know they're safe. They need to know they're not judged. They're going to have someone show them mercy, compassion, love, just simple humanity. And that's really what they seek more from us than the education, you know. But first and foremost, that truly, what is the sisterhood or brotherhood if we can't truly show people love and care when they need to feel safe? Because when you become Muslim, you're bombarded by everything under the sun. The
Mm.
last thing you can worry about is exactly everything you have to learn. You have to deal with your family that may not want to speak to you, that's being mean to you or angry or whatever, your job, your school, all those things. So the studying will come, but I think what's most important is bringing the hearts together, because that's how people stay Muslim. At least
Mm.
that's my experience, inshallah.
Mhm. I know, I think that's a recurring theme for anyone who's worked in convert care. Um, and any kind of, I mean, these are generic, these are human traits. I mean, and it sounds almost, I mean, it sounds strange mentioning these basic human qualities about compassion and understanding and mercy, but it kind of needs to be said. And I think it's a lesson that we need, because I think it's something that the world's lacking. And particularly when it comes to convert care and kind of welcoming
Hmm.
people into a new stage of their life,
Right.
it's extremely important, and it gets put to one side with where the formalities and the kind of the outward manifestations of religion in some people's mind is like, okay, this is the most important thing, and in the process they kind of forget to be human. um
Right. Hmm.
um so some of the communities that you visited in Cuba and Mexico, um, these aren't in like kind of mainstream cities. Like I know in Mexico, in Chiapas, this is like the south of Mexico. So even people's appearance isn't what people would associate with kind of when they think of a Mexican appearance, as it were, the
Hmm.
indigenous Mexican, right?
Hmm.
Um,
Yes. So they are indigenous tribes from a Mayan background, and the elders and most of the community, their main language, their primary language isn't Spanish. It's an ancient Mayan dialect called Tzotzil. So the younger generation, they speak more Spanish because that's what they learn in school. But for the most part, they come from they're a very tribal, cultural, tribe.
mhm,
And they have their own cultural dress. which is, everything is handmade. So there's not like, with the exception of cell phones, which is like their only, most people don't have computers, but they'll have a cell phone. And now with smartphones, that's about the only access they'll have to the internet. And in Cuba, that's a whole nother animal altogether. They live in a very, very different environment because of the way that their government is. Everything is restricted. There's food rationing. There's
Wow.
never, I mean, someone who's a doctor makes $50 American dollars a month.
Wow.
So their poverty, at least in Mexico, it's not as restricted. So as long as you are able to access, uh, products and, aid and things like that. Cuba, we can't even, it's almost like I basically sneak into the country with everything.
Wow.
I've gotten questioned like by like a general or like some kind of really scary supervisor, putting me in a room for an hour, asking me everything under the sun. So I think that's where my pre-Islam life comes in handy, because you really have to be very streetwise to move in these countries, and kind of just really be, you have to really be alert to your surroundings, more so because of the way the government is towards religion. And that's in Cuba. And
Okay.
especially, something that it's not regularly accepted. I mean, it wasn't until just a few years ago that they allowed people to practice religion.
This is in Cuba,
So,
right?
and since in Cuba.
Okay.
I visited pretty much every major community of Muslims in the entire island, which range from really 2 hours outside of Havana to 18 hours away from Havana in
Wow.
Guantanamo City. Guantanamo City is where Guantanamo Bay, the famous Guantanamo Bay, is, which is actually 32 kilometers from the actual city. They're the poorest community because they're on the farthest eastern tip of the island. And then in the last trip where we were last year at this time, we were in the Isla de Juventud. It's an island that we had to take a plane that literally was like from the 50s, literally.
Oh my God.
I mean, literally, it was from the 50s or 60s, and you have to take a plane to get to the island. And it took like almost a whole day just to even take that. And then as soon as we got off the plane, there's like a customs agent and a very scary guy who's like the supervisor pulled us into the office, and there we go with the questions. So,
Oh man.
so it's not just, oh, I'm going to do dawa. No, I have to go like so on offense, like
Hmm.
to really be alert, because, and then, we, in our luggages, we're usually carrying clothing, books, all these things. They're not allowed in the country. So we're like,
Oh.
oh, well, dua,
Hmm.
don't open the luggage, don't take the luggage, because these people have no other option. I mean,
Hmm.
I've gone into supermarkets in Cuba thinking I was going to buy, let's just say we were going to make food packs for a community of like 30 or 40 people. We would have to get approval from a supervisor, and someone Cuban could be the only one, and they have to give like their identification number, which identifies them as a Cuban citizen. They're the only ones that could buy things. So it's the things that we have to do to serve people. It isn't just hit click when you donate. It's the work is being done, and it's very challenging. The people have a lot of things going on emotionally. There's people that come from other countries that try to abuse people. I mean, there's all, those are the things we deal with. But, at the end of the day, they're just happy to see us. And those smiles are worth every moment of struggle that I have trying to get to them.
Wow, that's incredible. That's really, it's really amazing. And I think until you've undergone that kind of difficulty in order to reach people, I don't think people, myself included, I've certainly not exerted myself to that extent, and I can imagine, how gratifying it is, as you said, to see those smiles, and to even just to visit,
Hmm.
and I heard some of these kind of isolated communities that they're amazed that people even know they exist or even care
Yeah,
to
yeah,
visit,
yeah, yeah.
and okay, I'm going to say something that you might not like here, but you don't talk about this stuff on social media normally. And I want to remind people here that we're very privileged to hear this, because you don't publicize. So if you look at your Facebook page or your Instagram page, we're not going to find this level of kind of this detail, or you talking about this stuff out of your humility that you don't mention it. So I want to thank you for sharing this stuff, and it's
You're
amazing
welcome.
for us to hear about these stories. What did you find in these communities? Like, we talked about the differences, for example, between the UK and the US being perhaps slightly more mature. What does a community of 50 Muslims in a communist country look like?
People just trying to have enough to feed their families. Uh, they have they don't have access to knowledge. I mean, now in the 5 years that I've been traveling there, now you can legally have internet in your house if you can afford it. You know,
Wow.
basically, we sit in parks that have Wi-Fi. So in between classes, the only way to have Wi-Fi, because no one has Wi-Fi, it's too expensive. They can't afford it. It's like, do I buy milk or do I have Wi-Fi? They can't afford both.
Wow.
The average person makes $15 a month. A doctor makes 50. One of our sisters, who's a physical therapist, a physio, makes $25 a month. Uh, we would sit in these parks, between classes, like, okay. And then we still need to get a Cuban citizen to they have like assigned cards to have access to Wi Fi. So then, we'd be there, okay, open the thingy so I can use the computer, use the internet. And we'd be like,
Mm,
and the signal is like way back in the day, like almost like dial up.
mm,
And you're
mm,
like
mm,
there like this. So they don't have access to anything. Like even if we do classes in Spanish, they can't get on. Zoom is blocked. B, they would never. They can't even download a video.
mm,
So they're at least they can get on Facebook and they can get on Instagram. But beyond that, everything is blocked. They can do WhatsApp, but they don't have. They can't WhatsApp video because they don't have Wi-Fi. They don't have
mhm,
a strong enough signal.
uh-huh.
And it's really the limited resources and the lack of knowledge.
Okay. Uh, and so what does, I mean, how does the community get by? Are they relying on these visits, that you're making, as and when you're able to, or do they have is there a teacher there, for example? Is there someone who they can, wow.
No, there's no such a thing.
And
We empower the main brothers on the ground. Uh, there's one or two brothers who've studied like a year or two in Turkey. There's a few people who we have in Medina right now, because Cuba has a good relationship, but that's really more for them to learn Arabic. So they're not really exposed to traditional Islam going to Medina University. So, but they're learning Arabic. So
mhm,
that's a start. There's one or two sisters that have studied in Turkey. And then there's the foreigner Muslims that are there for medical school, but they're usually not that knowledgeable. That's really how Islam grew for them, because I believe in like 2005, don't quote me, there was a big earthquake in Pakistan, and then Cuba made a deal with Pakistan to send 600 or 700 um, Pakistani students, medical students, to Cuba to continue. I think just so that their studies would not be interrupted.
mhm,
So I think from 2006 till about 2010, 11, around there, all of these students, they then went around the island doing dawah. And a lot of people converted at their hands, but most of them were just had a basic understanding of Fard Ein. They didn't really, but what they brought was the love, the mercy, the compassion, um, the access to, understand and learn the basics. So from once those students graduated from medical school, most of them all left the country. But there are some other African students that are like from Gambia or certain countries, or that they come and they'll be like the Qadi. They'll be the one that knows like the most recitation of Quran. And that
Okay.
would be the person that'll do like the khutbah. So usually the medical students, obviously, they're, academics, and they come with, at least from whatever country they've come from, like a little bit more than just Fard Ein. Like they'll usually come with having some, recitation, and they'll be the person to recite during Ramadan, or they'll be the person to do the khutbah on Fridays. But otherwise, uh, actually now there was the biggest mosque is in Havana, which is predominantly serves the immigrant community that's there working in the embassies and studying and stuff like that. There aren't that many Cuban Muslims that are born Cuban. Uh, but the imam that they had was from Egypt. He went back to Egypt, and a Cuban brother is running the masjid now, and he's the one leading the 5 daily prayers. And then one of the medical students from Africa, he does the Juma prayer.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. That's it's really amazing. I think, again, it's difficult to imagine unless you really witness like how a
Hmm.
community where Islam is so new there. Um, and in terms of kind of, I guess like culturally, I mean, I suspect Islam's not been there long enough for there to be this, but with Islam having come, for example, from African teachers or from the subcontinent, how does that, or does it influence the expression of Islam or the understanding of Islam that the native population experience?
I mean, I definitely think, I mean, the students, they're dressed in their shawal kameez, they love making chapatis whenever they can. So that's what they were exposed to. So they love South Asian culture because that's the love they saw. They love the clothing. So that's what they've only seen, you
Hmm.
know. Obviously we're coming from America, so we're coming with a very different, not very different, but just a slightly different background. The people that have come obviously are predominantly going to be from the Hanafi school, and we're from the Shafi school. So it's a little different, but we don't talk about madhab or any of that stuff.
Uh-huh.
Our teachers always say, we don't, it's just, we just keep it real simple and basic. We don't get into any details because they're so far from that even being a way for them to even function.
Hmm.
I mean, the way that they practice, which I think would be so difficult, because they don't have an understanding of madhabs and there's been no one to really teach. They'll open up Riyal Salihin and like to figure out how to practice. They'll
Okay.
find the topic, read the hadith, and go, okay, based on their limited knowledge, they're interpreting these hadiths in Riyadh al-Salihin because it's the only book of hadith that they have in Spanish, and that's how they practice.
Okay.
So this person who just became Muslim yesterday would just open the hadith book, go, okay, it says that. But again, I'm like, is the Spanish being translated from English? Is the Spanish being translated from Arabic? What does it mean? There's no context. So their practice it ends up being somewhat incomplete
Hmm.
because they're just literally looking at a one-dimensional book
Hmm.
and with their own interpretation assessing a fatwa or a ruling without any kind of learning.
Hmm. Yeah.
So that becomes challenging, especially when there's matters of, family matters, when someone dies, inheritance or no, like just all the things that where fiqh plays a part,
Mm-mm.
it just kind of gets dropped into the.
It's interesting because I think it's the opposite end of the spectrum to the world that we have now. So you go from kind
Mhm.
of not having enough access to almost too much access. If and I just want to caveat what I mean by that is that now there is so much information available, not just in terms of religious knowledge, but across the board. So and then what we see then is people go to the internet, which is absolutely understandable because you would do that in any other situation. If you were, if it's something related to someone's profession or an area of interest, the first place you're going to go to is the internet. And as we know, there's a real danger with that because of
Yes.
because
The
knowledge is
black
so easy.
hole.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there's so much knowledge that's accessible, and it can appear like, okay, this is so clear. Like
Hmm.
how could it be any other way? It wouldn't even occur to a person that
Yeah.
actually what the content that they see on the internet,
Oh,
where does
yeah.
it come from? What's the source? Um,
That's the problem. That's the challenge we have here in the States.
mm,
All the new Muslims, especially now since we've been home for a year because of the pandemic, it's, grabbing the new Muslims out of the rabbit hole, I call it. They're like, I'm in the black hole of information, and that's been the challenge for the new Muslims this year.
yeah. Yeah, and there's no reason why someone would assume otherwise. Like a person might not,
Hmm.
because even this concept that you mentioned it at the beginning a few times, this idea of sanad, or having this chain, having a system that recognizes and is able to filter out authentic knowledge for knowledge that is inauthentic, that actually doesn't have a basis. Because as far as the internet is concerned, it's kind of information agnostic. Literally, you make a video, like, no one's asking you for your credentials. If you've got enough money, enough marketing, and enough, the presentation behind it, a person can assume the air of
It could look
authority.
good.
Yeah. And to the outward observer, like, this kind of, okay, this it looks like this person's knowing it knows what they're talking about.
Hmm.
They
Hmm.
throw in a few Arabic words, and it's and there you go, and potentially
They got a
it
big
can.
beard. They
Yeah,
got the,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, they kind of look the part, and I think this does a lot of new Muslims and people coming back to the faith who from heritage community a lot of disservice, because there is not that structured support system, for example, or
Hmm.
the basis of that isn't necessarily authentic. And I'm sure we've all been exposed. Anyone working in convert care has seen where that ends up, and often it's
Yeah.
burnout, or it's harshness, or it's all of those, the antithesis of the things that you mentioned that you experienced at the Mecca
Hmm.
Center. So for me, like, one of the takeaways, like, from this conversation is just the importance of, like, a teacher, and having kind of authentic teachers, people who actually are conveying Islam as it is, and not as it isn't,
Hmm.
even if
Yeah.
it looks to be the part. Um,
100%.
One other aspect, I'm sorry, to go back your video on YouTube. You mentioned something towards the end, was this idea about identity and
Mm.
your identity. So you're a Puerto Rican heritage. So as a Latina Muslim in the US, what's did you encounter any struggles, or
Well, I
what
think
was
in
your
the
experience?
yeah, so sorry. Yeah, in the beginning, I think that because at the time, especially now, it's been almost 13 years, uh, Latino Muslims were a newer community. So all of the masjids or masajids near where I live are predominantly of Arab background. So there's no English, so their exposure, or even in the South Asian masajids, they're older generations. These are usually the older generations that are in the masjid every day, all day. The younger people are not in the masjid. So they're not exposed to converts. They just weren't exposed to converts. So I know now, I mean, they don't know any better. They're not really exposed to converts. They don't know you're a convert when they see you walking in with no hijab on, or completely dressed inappropriate, or whatever the case is. So, and not knowing the edeb, or the manners and behaviors between the different cultures, whether they're Yemeni, Palestinian, Egyptian, Algerian, Pakistani, Bengali, each group has their way that they greet each other, how they talk to each other, and they know because that's their culture. So if you
Hmm.
have a stranger coming in and they're like, looking at you like you're an alien. So a lot of groups of, immigrant Muslims are more reserved, or it's hard to kind of, get in. It's like being at high school, the mean girls, I called it, because no one lets you in.
Mm,
But
mm,
but then in retrospect, I don't know the cultures. I don't know their ways. They're older, so they're not exposed to converts. They don't even realize, oh, now they do. Now they see it much more prevalent. But I think at the time when I converted, you know, or even to this day, born Muslims will think, and I know nothing. I am not even, I don't can't even call myself a student of knowledge. I'm like a speck next to a student of knowledge. But they assume I don't know anything
mm,
because I'm a convert, though I've been studying with traditional scholars at every level for the past 12 years. So it has taken a long time also as a woman to, but also my teachers have supported me. I mean, in ways that I've not even seen brothers be supported.
mm,
So the teachers themselves have been very supportive. But in that first year, I didn't have the teachers yet. It was just starting. And it was the communities that were like not inviting, that I was like, you know, I'm Muslim just like you're Muslim. I love Allah and the Prophet ﷺ just like you do. We're not the same, but we are the same because
mm.
we have the same journey. We're all journeying and we're just trying to go back to Allah and purify our hearts. So I think after that, the doors started to open, especially once the teachers, but again, like anything else, it's like you have to persevere. It's like anything, any area of life, if you're complacent, you know, at some point that's not going to be enough, because the things that are evil around us are a lot stronger sometimes than the good that we're around.
Mm.
And that's something that we always have to really think about. you know Death is real and evil is real, and we have to always try to protect ourselves the best we can. And I know, again, I'm trying not to go into this lofty place, but you know over time you learn these things, the people that you're around, really, really being in good company, sincere people that love Allah and love the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that is invaluable.
Mashallah, it's incredible, incredible, and thank you so much for sharing everything that you have.
You're
And there's so
welcome.
much there's so many kind of lessons to take away. Um, what I'd like to do now is to open it to questions. I've seen there's been a couple that I think I may have missed. So I'm just gonna kind of scroll through and read them as and when I catch them. But please feel free to keep you can either raise your hand if you want to ask it on the mic, or you can type it in the chat. Um, One question that I saw come through was about the Muslim community in Jamaica. What was that like?
Wow. Oh, beautiful. Well, I really spent the most time with the Muslims in a really tiny community in the southwest part of the island, from St. Elizabeth, Treasure Beach. I mean, the brother of the imam, he was actually our driver, and his family really was serving us the most. And even to this day, I hope, inshallah, one day, God willing, I can help him get to Umrah. Scholars have never gone to see them. No one visits them. I mean, if anything, people visit the main community, which is in Montego Bay, but
Mhm.
that's the larger community. But this is a teeny tiny little community by the beach. And anytime I'm at the Kaaba or in Medina, I call him on video on WhatsApp, and I always surprise him. And subhanallah, he starts to cry. And it's the most beautiful thing. So his heart, I mean, he holds to that rope of Allah just like everybody else, with no help. And even through COVID, we tried to aid them last Ramadan, but because there was just so much difficulty with wiring and things like that, there was Western Union is a wiring service. They
Mm,
just felt that there was too much fraud and things coming out of Jamaica. They were blocking everything. So we weren't able to help them as I had intended. Um, the community in Negril, we got there, we went to pray there one day. And Negril is like the beach party area. And there's a masjid. And subhanallah, the imam was there, very nice, but there was really no one there. I think the largest community is, like I said, in Montego Bay. What's interesting also in Jamaica, you have people that a lot of the people who've converted were Rastafarian. And then you have some Muslims that are there that they're kind of like what they call themselves Roslims. So they still have some of their Rastafarian ways, which is part of the culture in Jamaica. And then, but they are Muslim, praying 5 times a day and have their little masajid. And so, but again, no one visits them. Like when I say no one visits them, not one teacher that I know has ever been to Jamaica. The only person that I know that's been to Jamaica because he's Jamaican, he's a chaplain in Canada, and I think he's the chaplain now of Toronto, where Usted Amjad is Usted Yassine Dwyer. That's, I think, the only person that I know has been there because he is Jamaican.
okay, interesting. So maybe a New Beginnings trip to Jamaica is on the cards. Um, I'm quite willing to put myself forward for it. If anyone wants to join me, and then Zainab, you can join us, and we can visit. We can visit this community in Jamaica.
Hmm. That would be
Um,
beautiful. I mean, they're beautiful. Everyone is beautiful there. But when you see this brother, his and I was literally right in front of the green dome, and I get, even though they're yelling Hajja Hajja Hajja, I get right up, by the arches, and I call him on WhatsApp, and the tears just start streaming down his face. Or at the Kaaba, he'd never seen it. He'd
wow.
been Muslim like 20 years.
Oh, that's
That's what
amazing.
it's all about. Just bringing the hearts closer to Allah. That's it.
Mashallah. Well, it looks like we've got a few willing participants for the journey in the chat. Monica's asking, is there a
Inshallah.
way to donate to some of these communities?
Yes, there is. I think that, now with Ramadan coming, uh, because certain countries have a lot of restrictions, uh, in terms of wiring money and these types of things, our focus for this Ramadan is going to be on the Dominican Republic, because we have someone that can travel freely back and forth.
Hmm.
Uh, Usted Hamid will be going next week. So we'll be providing Ramadan packages and the Dominican Republic, we haven't even talked about them. They've been on curfew for months.
Wow.
They can't even, so these people can't even work. They can't even feed their families
Oh
because
my
they can't
God.
go to work. There's brothers that have incurred debt, so we're sending some zakat now next week with Usted, so that he can help these brothers that have incurred debt because they haven't been able to work because there's a curfew there pretty
Wow.
much the whole year. 5 p.m. You cannot leave your house or you'll get arrested.
Oh my God.
So that's really been the challenge through COVID is there's the channels that we normally would use are kind of blocked.
Hmm.
And then on the other side, the countries, their infrastructure, their banking system is kind of just in a real disarray.
Hmm.
So that's why this year we're going to focus on the Dominican Republic. I'm going to try to aid the other places, but it's like it has to go different places before it gets to its destination,
Yeah. Yeah.
so but
Um,
we do things through Al Maqasid. I do certain things privately. Again, because of COVID, it just was just too difficult to try to do everything through Al Maqasid. Otherwise, I do everything through Al Maqasid. So I'm the Latin American outreach coordinator for Al Maqasid. So we do have a link that we use to send funds via PayPal.
Hmm.
And then the rest is just, hoping that this year things have opened up a little bit more so that the way the banking's wiring transfers and all these things isn't as difficult as it was last Ramadan.
Okay. And so if someone was interested in donating, should they contact Al Maqasid, the institute in the US, or you?
They can email me, and then I can give them all the information and the options that they have. My
Okay.
email is fit. Oh, you could put it in the chat box. Let me do that.
Okay.
Let's see, chat box. Okay, hold on. I'll put my email. At, and then you can just email me, and I'll give you the information. Okay. Oops, I forgot the L in Gmail. Sorry. Trying to type fast. So that's gmail.com.
Okay. Fantastic. Um, okay. One of the other questions that we were asked, and there's been a few here, but there's one that I'm interested in. And I explain why. So the question is, was a hijab hard for you? And the reason that I think it's an interesting question is, I think when someone has heard your story, it's glamorous, it's interesting, it's and it sounds kind of like, and I know this won't be the case because no one's journey is easy, but and
Hmm.
so from someone observing with just the details that we've heard, it can seem kind of like almost like it's been picture perfect, like you've been taken care of, you've had the right company around you, and I think sometimes people think that this is where the standard is, and this is what, oh my god, this is what I have to do, and oh my god, I can't wear my hijab in 3 months after becoming Muslim, and I'm not able to study this much. And what would your advice be to them?
Take your time. There's no time limit. You know, your journey is between you and Allah. Take your time. Uh, you'll know when you're ready for each thing that you might want to add into your acts of worship, or just always maintain good company. That's the most important thing. Be around good people. If you're in an environment that really makes it hard for you, that's the first thing to try to address. I personally, I ended up going like whoosh, cold turkey. There was no way to middle ground the environment I was in. And uh, you know, even some of my own born Muslim friends, when they knew I became Muslim, they're like, "No way! There's no way you're gonna do it. There's no way. What are you gonna do with your clothes? What are you gonna do?" Like, I mean, all my Muslim friends were doubting me. So, because people don't realize it's Allah that changes the heart. It's Allah that paves the way for you. So you just have to stay steadfast. You just have to stay, our iman goes like this, up and down every day, just like every other emotion. And you just got to stay little by little. It's better to be the tortoise than the rabbit. You know, don't go out the gate like the racehorse. Be like the little turtle, little by little, because what's most pleasing to Allah is that which is most consistent, even if it's little, even the smallest thing, but you're doing it with those sincere intentions, then it's Allah that makes it easier for you little by little. And it's okay. It doesn't matter. There's no where you need to be. Some people, they may take, certain people, like let's just say they've taken their shahada, they take months to learn how to pray. It takes them months to, stop drinking, smoking, hanging out, clubbing, doing all this. But they've said, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. They know Allah is one, and in their heart, they know Muhammad is his final messenger. And that's all it takes to be Muslim. You don't have to do anything else. You know, I just happen to be a person that was put on a path, And that's by Allah. That was decreed before I was born, when my soul was not even in my mother's womb. So, really, all you have to worry about is, do you believe Allah is one? Do you believe Muhammad was his final messenger? If you do, become Muslim. That's it. Don't worry about the rest. The rest will come. Doesn't matter if you pray in 3 months, 6 months, whatever it takes. It's between you and Allah. But that la ilaha illallah, that's everything, because that removes all the sins that you've ever done before you say that shahada. And the peace and tranquility that's placed on your heart is not something that anyone could describe to you, because that's something ordained solely by Allah for you. That's what I would say.
Beautiful answer. Another question. Do you have time, or
Yeah, yeah.
for
I'm good.
um so Jamila was asking, is it difficult to be a Muslim in the US?
No, not at all. I mean, I've only been a Muslim in the US. So, I mean, okay, let me rephrase that. I live in New York City, the most diverse city in the world. Like, it's the closest city that I can compare to New York is only London. All these other cities try to say, oh, it's kind of like New York. And I'm like, no. The only city I've been to in the world and in the United States that's like New York is maybe London. It's so diverse. I pray in the street. I pray in the sidewalk. I pray anywhere. No one says anything,
Mhm.
you know. Again, if I lived in middle America, then that's a different story. If I lived in a red state, I live in a very blue state and the bluest city.
Blue's
So,
good.
yeah, blue is good. If you're, so I think it really becomes the where you live. In New York, no, not at all. But then
Mhm.
again, like anything else, bullies only pick on people they think they can bully. So I always say, man, I wish I was there when anybody picked on some of these hijabis walking with their carriage or anything like that, because ultimately the Umar ibn Khattab in me comes out.
The Bronx girl, Zainab, the Bronx girl.
Yeah,
She's
Bronx,
feared.
Brooklyn. I mean, you're only bullied if people bully those who they think they can bully. If you're firm and you're comfortable in your own skin, that's only words. uh and I just think that we need to teach people, though, how to just be more resilient and comfortable and confident, and just like, if people say things, well, that's all they're going to do. I mean, obviously, yes, there's accounts of people being hurt and things like that, but again, bullies only take advantage of people they think they can bully.
Mm, mm.
So me myself, I don't usually have problems.
Interesting, interesting. Maybe they can sense the Bronx in you. Like,
Yeah.
no, no, not this one. We'll go for the
Wait,
next one.
Brooklyn. I'm from
Oh, oh,
Brooklyn.
oh, oh,
I
Brooklyn. Sorry,
grew up
sorry.
early from the Bronx. I'm a Brooklyn
Okay.
girl.
Okay. So for me as a Brit now, so what's the difference between a Bronx and a Brooklyn girl?
Oh, it's totally different. I guess, everything we say is different. We have a totally different vibe. Our swag is different. But I love the British accent. So I'm a sucker all day for the British accent. So I would take a Brit accent any day over my Brooklyn, New York accent. Your everything is so poised, and the elegance and the properness, and it's just things that don't we don't pay attention to a lot of things.
Yeah.
In the UK, I mean, even just when I was in London, going for coffee and, just going for tea. We don't drink tea. I drink tea only if I'm sick. That's not culturally a thing for me.
But
Tea is
you
not.
drink coffee. You drink coffee.
We oh no, we
Coffee.
coffee. I went to
Coffee.
Prove Off, Workshop, Monmouth. I went to all the spots in London. I'm a coffee connoisseur too. I don't know. I think it's being in the Islamic teacher group. The teachers
You
all
like
love
coffee.
coffee. So
Yeah.
I went to all the good coffee spots. Even when I got to Birmingham, I was like, I need to find a good coffee spot. I need a pour over. I just think the level of mannerisms, the elegance, the adab that Brits have is just something far superior to us. There's just, this European je ne sais quoi, I call it.
Interesting.
Americans, we're like real in your face, like blah. I mean, but we'll tell you how it is. We're not going to sugarcoat.
Can I teach you a word that you can
Sure.
Google, which may change what you've just said, may change your perceptions. The word, and I'm going to type it on the room, is called chav. So the Brits
Chav.
know what I'm talking about. So when you think elegance, poised, articulate, cultured, Google this word and let me know
Okay.
if you
I
still
took a
hold the same
screenshot.
opinion.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, that's a, I think that's an image that we export and that we hope people believe.
No,
And I
I've
think
gone
it's been
all
believed. It seems to have
over.
worked.
Yes, it works. Yes. Everyone is so, mashallah. Like, every store I went to. I also, when I was in London, I loved Bayswater and Notting Hill. So I stayed in Bayswater and I went everywhere and there was Muslims everywhere. I was like, Salam alaikum, salam alaikum. Everybody's looking at me like I'm crazy. They're like, and I was like, I go into a shop. Now we don't say shop. I say store, but because I'm on with a bunch of Brits, I'm going to say shop. And I'd be like, I'm an American Muslim. I'm a convert. And all the shop owners were always Muslim. And they'd be like, wow, we've never met an American Muslim. And I literally must have told my story in about 10 different stores.
Yeah, that I
It
can
was
imagine that
great.
happening. Yeah,
It was great. There was Muslims everywhere. It was great. I
it
even
is.
took the tube. I don't even take the subway. I hate the subway. Well, I don't hate anything. I dislike the subway. I haven't taken the subway since I've been Muslim.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
But I was so excited to take the tube. It was great. I
Why?
loved it because I don't do that here. And
Okay,
it's
okay.
nice and clean. It's clean. I like the sound, going through the stations. I went to Oxford Street. It was great. It was fun.
Okay, when you said clean, I struggled to process any more thoughts and all my senses cut off because there's an article that I probably won't share with you about the tube and cleanliness, which
The New York subway is much more dirty. Even if the tube is not so clean, well, the subway is worse.
I have an article for you that may suggest otherwise, but we'll we'll agree to disagree, or I'll show you
Okay.
the article and you may reconsider.
I took the train from I forgot the name of the station, the big station in London to Leicester. Oh, I went to Nottingham from London, and
Okay.
then I went to Leicester back and forth because I was in Leicester already, and I took the train, like a faster train. That
Yeah.
was nice too. I took the fast train from the airport into London. That was really cool. Into King's Cross, I think.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, wow, this is so cool.
Yeah. And did you see everyone drinking cups of tea and their scone? And that everyone has afternoon tea.
Yes,
So there's a
yes.
British ritual that at
Yeah.
midday on the tube, doesn't matter which
And
station you go to.
we don't drink tea. We're not tea drinkers. I
Yeah.
loved it. I can't wait to come back to the UK, inshallah.
We
Is
would
it
love
time
to
to
have
ask a
you.
question?
It is Saleh. Saleh is from Nottingham, by the way. He's the pride of Nottingham. So
Yeah,
Mashallah.
I'm a chav. Like I'm council house and violent, bro. That's me. So if like that's we actually met Zainab in 2015, very, very briefly after Jummah in the Bay Area somewhere. Jummah was led with Imam
Ah,
Zaid and
Mashallah.
by Imam Zaid at the time. I've been out there a few times since, like to look at the dawah out there and met a lot of the leadership from around the US. I'm
Were
not
you
name
in
drop.
was it the NMP
Yeah, I was
program?
in the MMP
Okay.
in 2015.
Okay, yeah, MMP. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, mashallah. Okay, I remember. Yes, mashallah.
And there's definitely like things that I say that because I want to give Senate to a question I'm going to ask now. So not just name dropping, but there's definitely like strengths and weaknesses between the US and the UK. Like there's things that we could learn from each other. I was listening to another New Yorker last night, and actually another Zainab. Her name's Dr. Zainab Kabar, and she was given a closing address for like this thing with it, for Yale, for the MSA at Yale.
Mm.
She's been studying. She two degrees from Ivy League colleges. She's an African American, daughter of a convert. Father was an imam, and she's been studying Muslim leadership for about a decade. And she thinks in the US and the UK actually, she's been studying our leadership. And she's like, we've got similar problems moving forward, like in the US and the UK, particularly around a crisis of leadership, and how we perceive leadership, what we perceive leadership to be. You saying that, like, you know, I'm just a speck, I'm just like not even a student of knowledge, and that's actually the irony is that's a sign of tarbiyah and a sign of a good Islamic education, right? But then you're a leader. I mean, there's no question about it, you know, because you're a servant of the community and you're having a social impact, type of social impact that some students of knowledge and imams maybe have a halal jealousy for, right? Like they'd want to, but they're not having that kind of social impact. And I think as a convert, particularly as a woman, but as a convert as well, there's like this double, this kind of double jeopardy here, where it's like, as converts, you might join the Muslim community with skills and talents that could really uplift and serve the Muslim community. But because we have the kind of perception of what it is to be a leader or what it is to be useful, that like actually converts sometimes really entropy when they join the community. So like their talents aren't taken advantage of, and we have a brain drain at the point of input, at the point of entry. And actually you're a good example of somebody that hasn't allowed that to happen. And it might be environmental, but yeah, I think like I wonder if you could speak to that, you know, and your experience of that, and you know, because like in this group, there could be a whole bunch of people that might have skills that could really uplift the community, and they might have a great social impact, but only if we reframe how we understand leadership.
Right. Bismillah. So I think that because in my previous life, I'd always been a teacher. I've taught around the world, personal trainers, how to be personal trainers across the US and in Asia. And so I think my previous life experiences enabled me to have that comfortability to speak in even the most difficult situations. And with the teachers, I really had to pay my dues, I call it. Like, I really feel that even though I still slipped in there relatively quickly, but with each teacher, I had to pay my dues and was tested in knowledge, in my edeb, how I conduct myself. So I think that it was not something that I thought of consciously to be in this position. I was slowly thrusted into the position. But then as I was in different circles, I observed that I have to step my manners and my edeb and my way I conduct myself in all aspects, I have to step it up. And as I was getting that tarbiyah from certain teachers, I was then able to quote unquote pass the test from other teachers. It just has to be something that innately you have some leadership qualities initially from your pre-Islam lifestyle, life. You know, could have been in work, could have been in school. Doesn't mean that it's exclusively has to be that way, but I think it makes it easier because those skill sets carry over. And then in the UK, because there's a longer tradition, I would see how, you know, breaking into that inner circle, so to speak, is and getting the respect of the teachers and getting the support of the teachers, you know, they see things that we don't before we even speak a word. So I think each teacher has a different way in which they conduct that scanning or that, you know, is this person, really dedicated to this? Is this something that they really want to do? And I think it's just really aligning with the right teachers or circles that appreciate you and really utilize your skill set, even if it's not an Islamic knowledge, but really bring you in and bring you to the table, whether it be on the board of an organization as a respected person of the community. It doesn't necessarily have to be that it's always teaching, but there's so many capacities that, can be useful in the community. But my experience is that, especially as a woman, and I would say all of my teachers, I mean, I do have female teachers, but really all of my teachers are male. I paid my dues. And it was always like that. There was that subtle, like, okay, I'm not there yet. And then a teacher will let yes, I was rough with you. I was this, I was that. They will give you feedback. You've grown, you've developed, you've applied yourself. We've watched you change. We've watched how especially uh, if you do have a presence on social media when you think they're not looking. Yes, they are. How you speak on social media, how you conduct yourself on social media. I am more conscious of that because of my teachers than anything else. And also, as I was just listening to Sheikh Hamza's text messages, he has a podcast yesterday, the latest episode, and he was talking about that people don't realize what you say. It's an extension of your tongue. It's an extension of the pen. What you say on social media, that stays forever. So you have to watch what you say. You have to watch the debates you get into and the arguments and all these things, because you're going to be accountable for all that. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but that's just my experience. And it has to be something that the teachers are helping you develop because they see in you that potential to do X, Y, or Z that benefits the masses.
It kind of answered my question. And I think I don't want to hog the mic, but it's kind of a cultural thing. I think this is one of the strengths in the US, where you've got, on one hand, it takes humility from the student to wait for that ishara, but also it takes the creativity and the insight of the teachers to be able to give that nod. And I feel like, I don't know, for some reason, I felt like, particularly my experience of the Bay Area, which is like, in a sense, the community that raised you, they're pretty good at that. And I don't think we're so good at that. I don't think we're so good at that in the UK. I might be biased. It might be just the grass is greener. And the grass is greener where you water it, right? So
Right.
So I'll stop there. But yeah, it was really useful. And it's been really an upswing to hear you tonight. So thank you so much.
Alhamdulillah, Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah khair. Thanks for that question, Saleh. I'm aware we've taken 1.5 hours of your time, more than the 1 hour that I thought it would be.
Bismillah, you got me. So if there's another question, we'll answer one more question.
Yes, can I ask a question, please?
Yeah.
You were talking about, Zainab, hi, hello, your schoolers. Were all your teachers, was it like something official, or did you also have teachers outside institutions, like personal or?
In my career, that's why this format of learning was a no-brainer for me, because in my career, I'm a student of the fathers of movement in America. So that structure of learning directly from the teacher and then teaching others, that is how my whole profession has always been. So I think it made it easy for me, because I've always had male role models. I've never really had, in my profession, which is in sport and athletics and physio, I've never really had female role models.
I have a sports background, so I know what you mean. Yeah.
So for me, I wasn't uncomfortable with having male teachers sorry, that was a signal that my device is dying, but we have 11% on my battery. So I think that that made it easier, and I wasn't uncomfortable again taking from male teachers.
I have a male teacher outside New Beginnings. I have a male teacher in Kuwait.
Right, right. And I also have amazing female teachers, but not as close in proximity, just because of the way that they choose to teach, which is fine. You know, that is their choice. But I find when I have more access to my teachers, it helps me as well. Because if I didn't have access to the teachers, it would be easy to drown as a new Muslim.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for all of the questions. My apologies if I didn't get around to asking a question that you asked. I wanna thank everyone for staying this long. I want to thank Zainab for joining us. It's been an amazing conversation, and there's so much to reflect on in terms of lessons, in terms of the importance of teachers and the importance of having good company and mentorship, and I guess appreciating the environments that we have, given that, you know, you've witnessed communities in dire need, really, of the very basics in order to kind of maintain that spiritual health or really begin that journey. So thank you for sharing that. And
you're welcome.
Again,
Jazakallah khair for having me.
It's been an honor, no, really, and I know that you don't speak about this much on social media, and you I don't think you tend to do much of this in terms of these conversations and be as candid and as honest about this side, this kind of aspect of your life. So I really want to thank you on behalf of everyone at New Beginnings and everyone in attendance. It's been an amazing experience for us, and I pray that Allah continues to give you and allows us to benefit from you, and allows you to keep giving, and inshallah keep touching people's lives. Thank you so much. I pray that everyone enjoyed it. I pray that you benefit, and hopefully that you can follow the activities that we've got on social media. We update our Facebook and Instagram very regularly, so you can find out about the different events that we've got. And I pray that everyone's safe and well. And for people whose family members are sick, I pray that Allah grants them health, and I pray that Allah keeps us in good health, you and your loved ones, and keeps you in faith, and keeps you close to Him. May Allah always keep us close to Him and increase us in that love and beauty, inshallah. Thank you so much, and hopefully this talk will be uploaded onto YouTube on the New Beginnings channel soon. And again, a final thank you to Zainab for joining us. And
you're welcome.
You haven't heard the last of us.
Sounds good. Okay, assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.